boy, this has been an interesting week. But boy, I'm telling you, podcast here is loaded, y'all. Good afternoon. My name is John Washington, and welcome to this episode of Black Beat Podcast. You know, where we take an unapologetic approach to the issues that affect the black community. And today we got a barn burner. We got one called the Preference Policy, Homeowners Opportunity. The Preference Policy was implemented in 2015 to mitigate the impact of urban renewal and displacement that prominently displaced black people from Portland. As of 2022, 85% of the people who brought homes under the preference policy was black. Well, today I got a couple guests with me. One surprise one, Miss Leslie Goodlow. We appreciate it. Of course, she's on the show from time to time. And also we have Divisha Gordon with us from the Housing Program Coordinator. Good afternoon, y'all. I appreciate y'all coming on the show.
Good afternoon, John. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and talk about important topics here in Portland.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell you, and this one here is an important one, especially when black folks can have some preference.
Yes.
And welcome also, Divisha. Tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Divisha, and I am a housing program coordinator, as you've mentioned, and I've been working for the Bureau for about 7 years on this policy. I always make the joke that I've been working as long as my child has been alive, because my child was born of this work. So glad to be here.
Great. And Leslie, tell us a little bit about your background also.
Well, I've been at the Housing Bureau since 2012. Equity and business operations manager, and before that I spent about almost 20 years working for Multnomah County. I'm a licensed social worker that kind of fell into business operations, and
right
just excited about the preference policy and this homeownership round. We really want to get the word out to people to apply. So thank you so much for having us today to talk about it.
It's always my pleasure. Ladies, in 2015, the preference policy was launched as a strategic response to the historical urban renewal projects that drastically displaced the black community throughout Portland. Fast forward to recent years, and we see that the impressive 85% of the beneficiaries of buying these homes through the initiative are black families. Okay, tell us a little bit about, how this is all this came about.
So I'll start. Because I was part of the initial process. The preference policy was born out of the Trader Joe's situation.
Oh, I remember that time.
Yes.
Something else was fascinating.
Yes.
Yep.
And Commissioner Saltzman, who was the housing commissioner at the time, and Mayor Hales, pulled some money from PDC. It was PDC
it was about
at the
30
time.
million, wasn't it? I remember that.
20 million was the initial.
20?
Yep, 20 million. And so we did community engagement. We had about 600 people participate. And one of the biggest things that they said was, it doesn't matter if you build it if we don't have priority. And so out of those comments and working with fair housing attorneys and community stakeholders, we not only created the 4 housing goals with the sticks and bricks, so that's retaining homeowners, creating new rental homes, and then land banking. We also came up with this preference policy that gave preference to people with generational ties to Northeast Portland.
Yeah.
So if you lived there, and it doesn't matter when you lived there, if you only lived in Northeast Portland for 10 minutes, if you have an address, and you can show that you lived at that address.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then your parent, grandparent, or guardian lived in Northeast Portland, so you could get up to 6 points, and that was your preference. And then we had a whole nother process for people who lost their homes due to eminent domain.
Right.
So we did the first round in 2015. We had just about 1,000 people apply for 65 spots, which was what the initial investment was. And of that first round, I think we've still got about 12 people working with PCRI from that very first group.
Yeah, I remember that. You remember that? Yeah, because I remember old Maxine.
Yes.
Yeah, she was Fitzpatrick, right?
Yes.
The former ED over at PCRI, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, after the mayor said that the homeownership project was a dismal failure. He called it in a council meeting. That we shifted gears. We contracted with Portland Housing Center to be our single source for managing folks on the preference policy list. And since that time, we have a total of 127 families that have become homeowners. 11 of those were able to buy without any subsidy from the city. And the other 116 got some kind of subsidy. Either they got a down payment assistance, or they purchased one of the units that we built in conjunction with Habitat for Humanity. So we're very proud of those numbers. We had a goal of 110 by the end of 2023.
Wow.
By the end of 2023. Wow. And so we surpassed that goal.
So that was 85, more than 85% of what you expected, that you were,
we expect 110, we got to 127. So we're a little bit over, and then now we've got, moving forward for the next 5 years, we've got a goal of another 100 families with the revenues and the buildings that we're putting together.
Woo. Now, who would have thought that, because there was a number of things going on at that time when the preference policy first came to bear, when we were sitting down there for the Trader Joe's issue. I think it was about gentrification also, right? We were just bleeding people, and there were a number of reasons why they were fleeing and going away, but mostly they were just being outpriced in the community.
Correct.
Okay, so here we are now. So what are some of the core components of the preference policy, and how does this specifically aim at the assistance of black families?
So I'll start, and then I'll let Divisha jump in because she does the mechanics. The area of town that we chose in Northeast Portland, we looked at census data going back to 1970. And so we watched as the migration of black and brown people out of those areas, and we chose the areas that we saw had the most significant displacement or reduction in people of color. And so we drew a line around it, and then we looked at the significant events that happened that impacted those areas. So we had the Coliseum, we had I-5, we had the Albina Community Plan, we had the Emmanuel Plan, somewhat Vanport, although that wasn't included, but we looked at what happened with Vanport, where people got pushed to. They could only buy in Albina. So, the black and brown folks that got pushed out of Vanport ended up in Albina. Redlining, the amount of redlining that was happening, what that area of town was that they were doing the redlining in, because it only went to like 33rd. So that's how we chose the area of town where we would give people points. And so now I'll turn it over to Divisha to talk about the mechanics a little bit.
Absolutely.
So you the mechanics lady, Divisha. Come on, girl.
So. Can't fix it. Can't change your oil, but I can work through this program a little bit. So essentially how it works is each of the areas are represented on a level of urban renewal activity that happened in the area. So you have the higher areas, and that's where you can an applicant can earn up to 3 points per address. You have an area where a moderate level of urban renewal activity occurred, and that's when an applicant can earn 2 points. And then you have one where there were lower levels of urban renewal activity, still disrupted, still growing, and still happening, but it just hasn't been as impacted as those other areas, and that's where a person can earn 1 point. And basically how that works together is an applicant, to get their piece, how they've been impacted, they enter an address that ties to them, where they lived, and they can enter a historical address, which belongs to an ancestor. This is where we extend it to grandparent, great-grandparent. In about 10 more years, we're going to be doing great-great-grandparent.
Wow.
And it's going to just continue to build on from there. Leslie already spoke a bit to how eminent domain works. So how that essentially works, these are people who have had their homes taken. I'm very proud to say that we have worked with people who have owned their home, or who have ancestors that had owned their home, and people who have rented. it's probably my favorite part of my job is being able to research and see the overlay and see the different tax lot maps to see how urban renewal impacted not only people who owned homes, people who rented, and people who had businesses as well in those areas. Because what folks don't know is since folks were redlined, some people, I had one narrative where a person lived where their business was, so we were able to extend that to them, that eminent domain status, priority status to them, and prioritize them and place them on the top of the list. How those points correspond with the list, because it's a list for these opportunities, is it determines the order of the list. So as mentioned, those who have top priority status, those are the folks at the top of the list. Those are folks we work with first, and getting them confirmed for referral for services or to the housing opportunity. And then we have those who have 2 addresses that earn 3 points or 6 points, 5 points, and so forth.
Wow. Thank you for that. And tell me a little bit, how does this preference policy navigate federal and state laws, regarding racial preference? We live in a society that's constantly trying to somehow play checkers with us, or chess, making sure that every time we make a move, they make a move. So, but how does this preference policy navigate those laws?
So this is the only preference policy in the country.
Wow.
That was based on geography.
Whoa.
And so that's how we have managed to withstand review by HUD. HUD actually had us come and do a webinar to talk about our preference policy because we based it on where people lived and not what color they are. Now, it comes to pass that the folks that are benefiting the most are Black and brown people because that's where they lived.
Gotcha.
But this is so anybody can apply. It's just when you apply, you may not get the most points. And so you go onto the list based on the number of points you have, not because you're Black, not because you're Hispanic, not because of any of those things, but just strictly based on historical ties to Northeast Portland and and that you lived in Northeast Portland. We just had a conversation with folks from Berkeley a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
Berkeley's they're doing their own preference policy. King County, Seattle, they're modeling theirs after us. City of Austin is modeling their preference policy on ours. And so we're watching as across the country, people are using this as an opportunity to try to address historic gentrification in areas of towns that had previously been Black and brown people.
Right. So it wasn't all about skin color, more or less. It was about where you lived.
Yes.
That's exciting. So, but y'all tell us, let's open that up a little bit. What are some of the challenges, that y'all are facing right about now, and that the program faces? What have been the biggest challenges, the criticisms, the preference policy since its inception?
I think a couple of things that we've been trying to address, at least on the rental side, is once people get on the list, they don't respond when we reach out to them. And so really trying to ensure that we have a viable list of folks that are interested in moving into rental units.
Right.
The home ownership side, it's tougher because right now the housing market is so hard.
So weird. Yeah,
it's just
inflation,
interest rates are so high. Even though house prices are coming down, people are still struggling to get a mortgage that they can afford because the interest rate's so high. HOA fees are significant. If you go into a townhome, usually you've got real high HOA fees. And then for us, we have also, to combat some of the challenges, we just increased our down payment assistance for interstate
from 100 to something.
100,000 to 150,000.
Whoa, that's serious.
That's significant, and it's forgivable. So if you stay in your house for 15 years, half of it's forgiven, and then the rest of it is forgiven 3% a year up to the 30th year. So if you sell your house at the 16th year or the 18th year, then we calculate how much of your loan has been forgiven and what you owe back to the city. Because our oversight committee, which you are part of, really challenged the city to not put additional burden on homeowners.
Yeah.
And so, we know that millions of dollars get forgiven by the federal government and the state government every single year, and that why we were insisting that people who've been disenfranchised, displaced, and now we're saying we're helping them, but then we put a great big second mortgage on their house.
Wow.
So I think those are the two biggest pieces of this is the loan forgiveness. It's a silent second, no payments, and we just increased it to $150,000 to try to help people be able to get that first mortgage and buy a house.
I don't know where I've been when I wasn't this around when I was going through all
Hey,
this.
that's what I'm saying.
You know,
I was happy to get that
you know.
$15,000 Nehemiah grant when I bought mine.
But now, there was a point in time when something transpired to where there was the preference policy is now coming back on deck, but there was a point in time when it was off deck. What occurred, and can you talk a little bit about that transition? And I'm glad that it's back on deck, but what occurred that you can put it off and then, tell me a little bit about that.
Just to clarify, in relation to homeownership or rental?
Either one. Yeah, the preference policy, because at some point in time, the preference policy list was not being used anymore. Or it went down for a second.
We had a homeownership list in 2019
Gotcha.
that we ended up having to just cut off because we had about 300 people and we didn't have any money or resources. And so
Gotcha.
we sent letters to all those folks saying, hey, we don't have anything for you right now. We're going to open the list back up in a few months. And so Divisha can talk about that.
Yeah, so we had a number of folks, as Leslie had mentioned, that we have been working hard to make sure we re-engage for the opening of this opportunity, especially given that we have more variety in terms of the funding for DPAL, and we have some really exciting new construction coming on board, one of them being Williams and Russell coming on board as well.
Yeah.
So we reopened. We hit the ground running, I will say. As always, with a new policy and procedure, you feel like you are continuously learning and building the tracks as the train is coming. But we are finally in a position where we're able to have more offerings for people. This is coming with free home buying counseling from PHC experts.
Wow.
Someone who's essentially holding your hand through the process of purchasing. It is coming with a whole ordeal of community-oriented type of buildings coming along. We were just talking about earlier how one of the buildings coming on Cary Boulevard, the way those homes are being constructed is being built as an intentional community. So we have more opportunities available to individuals, but what we're really trying to push is engaging with the applicants on our list. Because I will send a note and say that is, I wouldn't say where we failed, but it's where we learned. We would go really hard in the paint promoting on the front end and letting people know about the opportunities, and there would be questions about where's my keys. I'm coming to this bureau. You must have my key. You're holding it. It's in Leslie's office.
What you know about the paint? Listen to you talk about the paint. You're inside the paint. You mean in the heat?
I'm also.
That's okay, dear. Come on with it.
Nonetheless, it's really exciting how we're operating the program now. So we took a bit of a hiatus. We went back a little bit, went back to the coffers, but we're coming on hard with making sure that the people who are in this program have the guidance, have the information they need, and it can give this program a new life and a new opportunity and a new perspective for people who are coming on and changing their expectations around the expectation of a key, or maybe the expectation of getting back exactly what people feel was taken from them.
Cool. No, I'm all with you, and it ain't always about the negative. I mean, it's always good that you can retreat sometimes, or suspend, just to be able to reassess rather than not if you aiming at the target or not. You know, it's important that you get the. So hey, but enough of that stuff. Tell me about some of these positive stories. Give me some stories. Share some of these success stories. What y'all experiencing over there? Because obviously somebody got to be happy about.
Oh yeah, we've got
we've
got some great stories, and actually Tanisha Renee, who you've met, she's also on our oversight committee.
Okay. Yeah,
she was able to purchase her house through being on the preference policy. We have 2 people that we've hired at the Bureau who were able to purchase their homes through the preference policy.
Wow,
And so
wow.
now they're employees working with people
Wow.
coming through the preference
Oh
policy.
man, that's always wonderful.
You know, when you talk to families that never imagined that they'd ever be able to own a home, that nobody had owned a home in their family since their great-grandparents, that they have no idea what it even means to start to try to buy a house. What are the things that you have to do? You know, you got to improve your credit score. You got to reduce your debt to income.
You remember all that, huh?
I do remember that.
I remember it too.
You got to make sure that you've paid everything on time, and so all of those things go into when you get evaluated, and we know that historically Black people are always graded. We're not graded on a curve. We get graded straight on the rule. And so you might have the same credit score as somebody else, and because you're brown, that you won't get the loan, but they will. We know that has happened historically. And so thankfully, PHC does great work. They've got lenders that are interested in working with our people. We've got realtors that are interested in working with folks on our preference policy list, and I think that that's the reason why we're seeing more success. I think one of the challenges, just going back to your last question, has been that we just need to get past the notion that everybody's going to get a single family detached 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a garage and a yard and a picket fence.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough land in Portland for us to build everybody one of those houses. And so we need to think about, what does it mean to own, even if it's a flat, that you now it's putting equity in your pocket and not a landlord's pocket. And if it's a townhome, that's your piece that you can leave to your kids, or you can leave to your grandkids, or you can take equity out of it to pay for your kids to go to college, instead of paying the same amount of rent to somebody who's now, that's what they're using to send their kids to college.
Right.
And so I have struggled with this over the last almost 10 years that we've been doing the preference policy, of changing the mindset of what does home ownership mean.
Right.
Even with my youngest daughter, who's also, she's on the list, she's working with PHC, and every time she says, well, I don't want that. Right. I don't want that. This is what I want. Yeah. Okay, baby, I understand that's what you want.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to Harvard, but I didn't have the money to pay for that. So you have to temper what you want with what's realistic until you are in such a place that you can afford that next house. This doesn't have to be your forever house. This is your first house. And just getting people to think about that. Any ownership is better than renting.
And Leslie, when they get into these homes, do they have is there a sense that they have this reward? What's the experience? I mean, do they see the message that you're trying to convey to them once they get that, the fact that they're moving on up? I mean, it's like,
I think so. And I know Gwen, who's here but not on the mic, has done a lot of interviews with folks that are new homeowners, and just how excited they are, what it has meant to their kids, the stability for them. My mother, she didn't buy a house until I graduated from college, and she was able to buy a little house with a VA loan, or a house that had a VA loan on it, for $26,000 on 15 in 1987.
Wow.
And I bought my house, I was 30, and my oldest daughter bought her house, she's 27.
Wow.
And so my younger daughter is she's in the process of trying to buy a house. It means something generationally.
Oh, magic.
your kids grow up in a house that's owned by you, that they understand the
legacy.
Principles and the
Transferring,
legacy
yeah.
of home ownership,
Yeah.
and that's what they expect.
Yeah.
That they're going to be able to buy a house
Yeah.
at some point, as opposed to when my kids were small. I picked up Erica at school, a couple of little friends, and we pulled up in front of the house, and the little girl in the back seat, she said to me, "You all must be rich."
Wow.
And I said, "No, sweetie, we're not rich." She said, "But you live in a house
Wow.
and you have 2 cars."
Wow.
And that has stuck with me. I think Erica was in 1st grade.
Wow.
And, she's 27 years old. But that has stuck with me, that has been pushed onto us and onto our kids, that this is all we can expect, to be renters for the rest of our lives. And if I don't do anything else before I retire, I want to make sure that that's not the message to our people, is that you can buy a house. If that's what you want to do, there are places and people that are out there that can help you achieve that goal.
Right. And Leslie, I tell you, you hit me dead in the solar plex on a lot of this stuff, because I'm telling you, I grew up in the projects, right? And I often had wondered why because just right up the street, the Italians and the Irish people, they all lived, they all had their single family houses, and we was all in this project, and we seemed to spend a lifetime. And it was also generational. It's like when my sisters and them left the house, they went to another apartment in the project, and didn't seem to anyone thought about, well, maybe we could all collect. It was 7 of us, and plus my parents. At least we had a 2-parent household up. I guess that was the benefit of it. But we're paying this rent in these apartments, and no one has the thought. But yet, my mother's generation owned homes.
Right.
In the South, everybody that came from the South seemed to have that understanding. But the American dream was based on home and land ownership and taxation. And so, for us to think for 1 minute that for us to just occupy a rental space and that we're going to advance in this society, I think it's a ludicrous thought. I think it's a thought that's outdated itself.
I agree with you. And particularly here in Oregon, where Black people were specifically prohibited from owning land.
Yeah, that was even the compound. Right.
That's in the state charter, that, there were things in place for people to put them in the legal documents for houses, that you cannot sell this house to a Black person, that no Black person can live on this property unless they are a servant or a maid or something to that effect. And so I think we see it much deeper here in Oregon than they do in a lot of other states, because, we're the only state outside of the South that had those kind of laws. And we're 1.8% of the population of Oregon.
Tell me about it.
1.8%. And the home ownership numbers are lower now than they were in 1965.
Ooh, wow. But, okay, so we know where we came from, and the work that y'all are doing is just fantastic. It's beyond somebody's understanding the fact that you can come to Oregon, get on a preference list, get on a list, and be able to afford get a down payment assistance to go along with it, to the tune of the amount of money. It's kind of funny. When I bought my first house, it was priced at a point to where, for some odd reason, the price changed the day of signing.
Oh my gosh!
And during that time, I guess we was balling, but I had a Rolex watch on my wrist, and I remember when the people told me I needed to get another $4,000, I went down to the pawn shop with my Rolex, got that $4,000, came back, bought that house. I've been owning that house for the last 25 years as a result of it. So, looking to the future, in spite of all the challenges that we are facing here in Portland, what's next on the radar for the housing market? In light of the housing market change, what's the Portland Housing Bureau preparing to do to sustain this great effort, this heavy lift that y'all are taking on? What does the future look like? What are y'all doing that's going to be in terms of the preference policy that could expand it or impact it in any kind of way?
I'm going to be a little more real here. It might be edited out.
That's okay.
I was holding back. Make more Black homeowners. Being a part of the generation that grew up seeing one generation of my family, my great-grandparents, they raised me, own their home in multiple homes. My grandfather, great-grandfather, knew about his money, okay? And he would bring people up from Oklahoma, where he was from. He brought people down, down here from Alaska as well. I want to see that from my generation, because I see a lot of people who are feeling a little defeated and feeling like it's not possible because of the pricing, because of the market. I listen to both of you talk about these low prices, and I'm like, I think I've paid about that much maybe in 1 year renting.
Wow.
And I think that it's very important for my kids to see and to have that that understanding that it doesn't end with renting, that ownership is possible for us, and to not only just see me do it, but to see a community of us do it, which is why I'm so really into this program, because we're fostering communities, we're building housing, and yes, some might be attached, some might be detached. They won't come with 2-car garages. I don't know if that's in the plan, but it's going to be something where you go at least walk down a block and see, oh, that's where my community lives, and this is possible for me.
Right.
So I would like to see more of that. I would love to see more land banking, but more in the terms of ownership being turned over to Black folks.
Yeah.
There are a number of Black land trusts that I see that exist for farmers. I know a passion project of mine is seeing how that can be possible for just a group of Black folks to get together and to be able to come in and get support from the government to buy and own that land, operate that land. They decide if they want an HOA or not, or whatever they need to put in place to, revenue has to come through. We still live in a capitalistic society, but a way for them to be self-sustaining and not fully dependent on the loans, amazing loans and grants that we offer, but have it be fully transferred onto Black folks.
Yeah,
that's where
and
I would
that's
like to see
always
it
been
go.
a little bit of concern is about creating an independent entity or independent individuals more than dependency models, supporting dependency models. What are the types of, now we've been just talking about preference policy, but are there any other programs that you'd like to talk about that the Portland Housing Commission is bringing on deck, and some of those things? Is a golden opportunity to share some of those.
So I think a couple of the big ticket items going on at the Bureau right now is supporting permanent supportive housing, which is what they call it, for people coming out of homelessness that need, additional supports, and how much that costs to keep people that have been homeless or chronically homeless, keep them housed, and the costs and the stress on the staff when you've got somebody who's been living on the street for months or years. So that's a really big initiative that we have been working with Multnomah County on. They have the SHS dollars, and how can we utilize those funds in a better way. The other thing is looking at doing another bond, a housing bond, either us or Metro or both of us.
Gotcha.
We have been able to surpass the goals that were set from both the Portland Housing Bond and that Metro set upon us with the funds that we received from them. So we've done a lot of great work in building boxes. We built a lot of boxes, or we got a lot of boxes in the pipeline. On the other side, which we don't necessarily get funded for, but how do we ensure that people stay? How do we keep people in their units? How do we provide services and supports to them to keep them in their units so that they can start to focus on, okay, what's my next step?
Right, longevity and sustainability.
How can I start saving some money towards buying a house? Who can I talk to about setting up an IDA? All of those things that when you're worried about keeping a roof over your head, that's all you're worried about. You're not thinking about, okay, I'm going to be a homeowner in 5 years. I'm thinking about, am I going to be able to buy groceries for my babies?
Yeah, tell me about it, Les.
Or put shoes on my kids' feet. And so as we're building these units, that's the other component. And then last thing I'm going to say is, I think one of the biggest factors for us here in Portland is that the feds continue to increase the median income.
Yeah.
And that adversely impacts Black and brown people significantly. Right now, for a family of four, 100% AMI is 116,400,
Wow.
and the average Black family makes $48,000 a year.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely a disparity, you know. And when I look at this kind of situation, Leslie, I often wonder, you know, how do we scale this, you know, from where we're starting? And I do like what you guys are accomplishing moving forward. Is this, but I mean, in just the notion of a person waking up, coming from a place of not first person in their home, in their family to own a home, and then to establish what that means going forward in the future, you know. But ladies, tell me, is there anything, a question that you are sitting here thinking that I should ask you about this preference policy that you would like our listeners to know that I haven't asked you? What are some of your final thoughts about some of the preference policy, and if you want to make a contribution to our listeners about what this is about?
How to get on the list would be one of the things. That's one of the primary topics that comes up. How do people do this? How do they, you know, if I'm getting on this list, what happens next? Getting on the list, you want to go online, www.portlandoregon.gov/PHB. You're going to see a notice right on top that's going to take you to the application. Another thought that comes to mind is it's very important for people to know that they can talk to us. They can tell us what they're looking for at this program. I wasn't at the very beginning, but doing the research coming into this role, this was brought on by community. Mm-hmm. It is for us and by us, and there needs to be another huzzah or something to just remind people that this is something that you can still design. This is still forming, and your thoughts and your opinions matter. Show up to the oversight committee meetings and share your thoughts. Show up to all of our info sessions that we be hosting. I see 3-4 people come, and sometimes the same 3-4 people. We're out there. We want to see you. We're here for you. And you have a team of people. You have Leslie, myself, Shariah, Ramon, Gwen, and all of the Bureau behind you wanting to hear from you. It just meet us halfway.
Leslie, you got any final thoughts about this preference policy that you think some people out there in the community need to be hearing?
So I think my last thought on this is that the units that we're building for rental specifically, 99 years. The preference policy is going to be required in those buildings for 99 years. So when I'm no longer
here, will the building last that long?
Well, you know,
we
that's
told
the
last thing we told out
expectation.
a project, boy, made out of brick in less than 50 years.
Yep. So even when we put more money into it because we're going to renovate it or rehab the building, 99 years. So every time we put more money into a building, it adds on to the number of years that it's got to be affordable, right, and that the preference policy is going to apply. And so we've built that in to ensure that these 500, 600, 700 units that we're going to get out of the money that we have available, that this doesn't go away, regardless of whether I'm there, whether Divisha's there, that this applies because it's in their regulatory agreements, it's in their loan agreements. And so unless city council comes back and says we're getting rid of it and we're going to take it out of everything, which I don't know that would ever happen, but the expectation is 99 years. So if your kid's starting out and they need an affordable unit, they could apply for preference and, move out of your house and get their own spot while they're saving to buy their own place. So I think that's one of the most important pieces that we've built into this 99 years.
And what I'm hearing you actively say is that there needs to be a constant action on movement, right?
Yes.
It's not in perpetuity. It's not. We don't want you to have these apartments or whatever, but there are programs in place that support them to move beyond.
Yes.
And move and accelerate and grow in the pathway, and that is what I admire about the process. And you could start someplace and land someplace better.
Yeah.
And that's well, I guess that's old Jefferson moving on up, right?
Yes, exactly.
But y'all out there listening, we're moving on up, and that's what you need to be doing. So tell me a little bit about this whole aspect of community engagement. So now, what types of processes are you using to get out to the people in the community and let them know about what's going on?
Well, I'm gonna jump in real quick because Divisha has put together an amazing engagement plan working with Gwen. I mean, we got print ads, we got radio spots, we've got meetings, working with the library. So I just want to give her her props before she starts talking because she has done an exceptional job of ensuring that we are reaching every part of the community
Right
so
on.
that they hear about this.
Right.
Indeed.
Come on, Brady.
Absolutely. So very excited.
You in the pink, right?
I am. Yes, I'm in the pink. Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely have ads. I was really excited to get just placements on radios that I have been working on for a few years. We are featured in the numbers. That was a great partnership. We are featured on KBOO Community Radio. As Leslie mentioned, we have print, so we're reaching as far as Vancouver. We're just really expanding it out. We're going to be going really intense because what we have been doing in the past, just to give a little context, we would be out here, we'd be outside. That's what the kids say. We'd be outside. We were outside. We were at libraries providing in-person assistance to people. Sometimes as few as 3 people at a time. Sometimes as much as 10 people at a time. One time it was me, and I had to turn the open session into just a training, an info session, because we had so many people show up to get assistance and getting on the list. Fast forward to now, we are working to be more intent on making sure the word is out about the program, really getting those people who are taking initiatives towards moving towards becoming homeowners, who are really putting themselves out there, applying, asking questions, contacting us, and then we're shifting to where we are going to engage the people once they're on our list, and that's where we're going to carry out the bulk of our community engagement, so to speak. So we went heavy on marketing, and now we're going to go heavy on engagement, doing kind of the same tools. We're going to have open sessions where people will be able to come by and ask questions about how to verify their preference, because getting on the list is the first step. They have to provide, and what I find to be the most challenging part of this process, they have to provide documentation proving that they're affiliated with those addresses, right? Because it's a geographic preference and we're not going based on race. You can't just come and say, well, I'm Black, I lived here, and then eventually move on to the next phase. There has to be some documentation there to provide some legitimacy, so to speak, to the process. So we're opening it up to where people come in, they get the assistance they need, they get guidance, or handheld guidance through how they go about verifying their preference, and then from then on, we're providing them, wanting to partner with our developers to provide them more information on essentially what they're getting into. And that's something I'm really excited about. So it'll be more information once people are in the program and getting people on the list, and more information about getting people on the list, and a little bit about what the program is about, how to apply on the front end, but really going intense and engaging those people that will.
You know, Divisha, I really do appreciate you sharing that. But, you know, as you were sharing that, something came up for me, and that was, in understanding the preference policy in the list is gender, okay? And that just all of a sudden thought about when I was thinking about the outreach and engagement. Are you spending any more time reaching out to gender, in specific meaning the difference between men and women? How many, are there more women applying for these things than men? And are you using any specific things to reach out toward men if there is an oversaturation of women, or vice versa?
You know, Mr. Washington, to be honest, that's not something we look wholeheartedly on. I will say that when I looked at the numbers, I've just been seeing and making sure that we're that the demographic is Black.
Yeah.
That we're targeting the folks that are towards the top of the list. That is, again, the list is for everybody. But as it breaks down by gender, I will say that we have had a pretty, from my assessment, we had a pretty fair balance.
Wow.
I think that I have seen, we had an article that came out some years back where it was a man who had purchased the house. And it was him and his family. I see a lot more folks coming in family units, so the separation of genders.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a bonus right now. It's a bonus at the end of this time.
So the families are getting it.
Great. And yeah, more power to you then. I think that it's aiming in the right direction. Though. I'd like to see that continue. And ladies, hey, Leslie Goodlow, girl, you always know you're welcome in my show. And Divisha, Miss Gordon, look here, sister. you in the paint. And I appreciate you being in the paint right about now. It sounds like you can navigate and handle your business in there, you know. Hey, y'all, look, this is the Black Beat Podcast, where we take an unapologetic approach to some of these issues and topics that plague us in our community. Y'all, you need to get behind this thing right here and get some better understanding. Again, Leslie, would you care to share how people can contact y'all in relationship to the preference policy and some of the other programs that you guys have available to at the Portland Housing Commission?
Sure. Portland Housing Bureau, www.portlandoregon.gov/PHB. That will take you right to our website and all the information about the Northeast Housing Strategy, how to apply for the preference policy, the Oversight Committee meetings, all of the tapes and agendas from everything that the Oversight Committee has ever done is on that website, as well as all the other initiatives and programs that PHB is working on are there available on the website. So I would suggest, if you're interested at all, go to that, look around. If you have questions, you can put in a email question through our info email address, and someone will get back to you very quickly. Either Miss Gwen or Divisha or myself will respond to questions that come to one of our info sessions. We are very excited about this homeownership round being open, and for folks that are ongoing folks applying for the rental list. I just want to reinvigorate. That's not the correct word. Just let people know, please, 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 if you get on the list, just respond. We really need people to respond so that we can get you into we've got brand new 2 and 3 bedroom apartments coming online in the next couple of months and over the next couple years. And we want to ensure that folks that really want to be in Northeast Portland have opportunity to move into those units.
Right on. Y'all. Hey, look here. Y'all out there listening, get up, get busy. You don't need to be bound by any limitations. These women and men are out there working every day on your behalf to advance your opportunities. And listen, from being a homeowner, from coming from families that weren't owning property, the greatest feeling that I have experienced in this opportunity in America from the time I've been born till now is having some home ownership. And I'll tell you, the difference between owning your home and renting, as Divisha already said, that sometimes you will invest in that rental opportunity the same amount that you will invest in home ownership. So don't ever believe that you can't attain your dream. And I want y'all to hear that really clearly. The opportunities that Portland Housing Commission is providing for people of color to move beyond their limitations is beyond my wildest imagination, y'all. Where else in this country or world you can go and get $150,000 as a down payment for a new home?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
We are the only jurisdiction doing that.
Hello, wake up, go and get busy. Ain't nobody holding you back but you. So anyway, again, welcome. We glad y'all participated with this episode of Black Beat Podcast, but we out. Thank y'all.